Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. Rajya Sabha was adjourned Monday till 11 a.m. on Tuesday as Congress and TDP members trooped into the well of the House seeking to raise various issues. Two bills were introduced before Chairman M Venkaiah Naidu adjourned the House in the morning session. Several opposition members, including from TMC and the Congress, protested as External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj introduced the Registration of Marriage of Non-Resident Indian Bill of 2019. The chairman, however, said that the bill was just being introduced. Tribal Affairs Minister Jual Oram introduced the Constitution Scheduled Tribes Order Third Amendment Bill 2019. Earlier, as soon as the listed papers were laid on the table of the House, members of the TDP trooped into the well demanding special status for Andhra Pradesh. Several Congress MPs too entered the well. The issues being raised by the Congress could not be heard in the din, but in the Lok Sabha, they had raked up the issue of alleged horse trading in Karnataka by the BJP. Lawmakers from BSP and SP, the two parties which have entered into an alliance for the next Lok Sabha polls, were heard raising the issue of deaths in Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand due to consumption of illicit liquor. The chairman made appeals to the protesting members to return to their seats and not display posters, but his appeals went unheeded, following which he adjourned the House. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze what is causing the logjam in Parliament and how to ensure smooth functioning of both houses of Parliament. Joining me on the program today are VK Agnihotri, former Secretary General, Rajya Sabha and constitutional expert; Ashok Tandon, senior journalist; and also with us on the program, Chakshu Roy, head of outreach, PRS Legislative Research. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Chakshu Roy, I'd like to begin the program with you. If you look at this budget session of Parliament, how would you rate it compared to the previous budget sessions, and how productive has this session been thus far?
Frank, I think this session is a little bit of an exception because it's the last session of this 16th Lok Sabha. If you look at the 15th Lok Sabha, it really did not have a budget session. It had a continuation of the winter session extending onto the budget, so there was no President's address. I think two or three things that come to my mind when I look at this current session. It is the last session of Lok Sabha. So what that means is all the bills which are currently pending in Lok Sabha will lapse. All bills which have been passed by Lok Sabha and sent to Rajya Sabha, they will also lapse. And all bills passed by Rajya Sabha and sent to Lok Sabha will also lapse. So a fair bit of legislative momentum and work that has been done on significant pieces of legislation will come to naught, if they don't get debated in the next 2 days. So that's one. The second aspect is, and this is where Dr. Agnihotri could possibly shed light also. The motion of thanks to the President's address so far has not been deliberated in the upper house. I don't remember of many occasions when that has happened. I think there was one or two occasions when it has happened, but more often than not, both the opposition and the Treasury benches would want to have a deliberation on the motion of thanks, because the Treasury can push for all the things that they have done and they propose to do, and then opposition can really contradict them or point out as to what are the areas on which the government has failed. So that's the second thing. I think the third thing is, this is the last session of the Lok Sabha, so this is the session that public memory is short. They will remember as this session as a precursor to everything that's happened in the past. And maybe this is something that this session will not something which will paint a Parliament's deliberative nature in very good light.
Right. Mr. Agnihotri, let me bring you in now. So what are the implications really of legislative business not being undertaken in the Parliament, and also more importantly the issue that Chakshu just raised about the motion of thanks to the President's address? What happens there?
You see, it is not for the first time that this kind of situation has arisen. It has arisen in the past, but in recent times it has happened maybe a little more frequently. The only issue is that how to make Parliament work. Now for that there are no easy solutions. The only thing I can say is that, being one of the highest constitutional bodies, actually one of the three pillars of democracy as they say, nobody else can regulate the working of the Parliament. It is only the self-regulation which has to work. And for that there are rules in both the houses, and if the members who have in their own wisdom formulated those rules, then they have to follow. So that is the basic thing that needs to be known in this context. But of course, it is unfortunate that this is the way the House has functioned, and in terms of the motion of thanks of the President address, well, if there is no discussion, it doesn't mean anything, except that there will have to be, the motion has to be brought to its logical conclusion, and it has to be adopted by the House. So let us see whether in the next 2 days, whether the motion gets adopted or not. If it doesn't get adopted, then it will be, of course, a very unique thing that has happened.
So it's never happened before, so this will probably happen for the first time. Mr. Tandon, do you see that happening? How do you see things being played out over the next couple of days? And also, what's causing this logjam really in Parliament?
See, let's not forget this budget session is in the election year, and therefore, obviously, all political parties are playing to the gallery. But and that's why these strategies are also different. So if you look back in the previous sessions, the opposition strategy was not to allow Lok Sabha function and allow the Rajya Sabha to transact business, because there the ruling party lacks majority. But in this very session, they are allowing the Lok Sabha to function, but not the Rajya Sabha to function. In the Lok Sabha, obviously the motion of thanks debate has taken place. Now today even the budget debate has also started. But in the Rajya Sabha, they are in fact trying to score point over each other by raising regional issues. But various political parties like the TMC is raising its own issue, and the TDP is raising its own issue, and Karnataka party. So therefore, I was expecting that we are just less than 100 days to go to the poll. But the ruling party strategy also has been very cleverly worked out. See, they have got three major opportunities. Firstly, the presidential address to the joint session of Parliament, where the President in fact gave a report card of the achievements and performance of the Modi government. And then was the budget by the Finance Minister Piyush Goyal. There again the government scored a point by providing a budget which the opposition described as election manifesto. And third occasion was the Prime Minister speech in Lok Sabha on the motion of thanks. And let's not forget that he made full use of that occasion, hour and a half long, very spirited speech in a very combative mood. Prime Minister Modi attacked Congress party and also the Mahagathbandhan. So the Prime Minister, therefore the ruling party has made full use of this session. If you look at the Prime Minister's attack, very sharp attack on Congress, calling it a Congress before dynasty, Congress after dynasty, and then, saying that they are Satta Bhog and ours is Seva Bhog. Therefore, comparison of the last so many decades of the Congress rule with his short 5 years rule at the center now, the Prime Minister went on attacking, and then he gave a lot of statistics also comparing, particularly on the sanitation issue itself. He said in the 55 years of Congress rule, only 38% sanitation. Now in our 5-year term, 98% sanitation. All these statistics was basically he was addressing the nation on the eve of election. And then he attacked the Mahagathbandhan also when he said it is the term which he used was Mahamilawat Sarkar, if they want to give it. So I think so far, only 2 days are left, the ruling party and the government have made full use of this session as far as Lok Sabha is concerned, and the debate also on the budget is going on, and then they will pass the finance bill as well. Now, as far as Rajya Sabha is concerned, I think in the last 2 days, they know that they will have to adopt the motion of thanks to the address to by President. It will be done. I'm very sure. But I'm not very sure about the debate on the budget, whether they will do it, because it's finance bill. Even if it is not approved by Rajya Sabha, automatically it becomes law. So I think both opposition as well as the ruling party, they have a strategy whereby in the Rajya Sabha we will raise all local issues, regional issues by various parties who are part of the Gathbandhan. But incidentally, I don't know why, Congress has chosen to do whatever they have to do outside Parliament by organizing roadshow in Lucknow today, and they fielded only Mr. Kharge in the Lok Sabha rather than Rahul himself taking this opportunity of attacking the government on various issues. Maybe it's part of their strategy. They want to make use of the roadshow better than the Parliament forum. But it was expected that any session on the eve of the election has to be basically political oriented.
Right. Mr. Agnihotri, Mr. Tandon is clearly suggesting that, it's a strategy really that the opposition as well as the government are employing in both houses of Parliament. But at the end of the day, when Parliament does not function, it's the common man who suffers, isn't it?
Well, I don't know how the common man suffers, because common man has no time to watch Parliament proceedings. They are too busy earning their daily wages and living and all that. But in any way, I mean, it doesn't make much sense to the polity in general that the members of Parliament whom they have elected and sent to the House, they are not really transacting business for which they have been elected. So somewhere they will express their view when the election is held, but otherwise I don't think, because let me tell you again, it is, although on paper it appears that the Parliament is not working, but a constitutional amendment bill has been passed and some other bills have also been passed, albeit without much discussion or whatever. So some work is being transacted, and at the end you will find that they will say that even though Parliament does not function, I mean, in terms of percentage of time it was disrupted, but still they will say that this is all that was done. Lot of other parliamentary committees are meeting on the sidelines of the Parliament, so that business is going on. But unfortunate that we are not able to see, at least on TV, that something concrete is happening.
But isn't that the purpose of Parliament, Mr. Agnihotri? Discuss and deliberate. I mean, we've seen some, fantastic debates in the past, on several issues, and that's what Parliament is supposed to do at the end of the day.
Yes, but as my colleague friend said, that in Lok Sabha there has been naturally much more debate and discussion, but Rajya Sabha unfortunately has not seen, which is the upper house, which is the house of elders, and one expects a more seasoned discussion and all that. So it is a bit unfortunate that it has not happened, and therefore it will ultimately be in the records of the debates that will show that nothing substantial took place in this period.
Mr. Tandon, do we just let go of this, saying that, it's an election year, this is on expected lines, this is how it's supposed to be, or something needs to change, at the and something productive needs to be done at the end of the day?
Well, I fully agree with Agnihotri ji that it is for the parliamentarians to decide. People have voted them, but unfortunately politics takes precedence over other things, and particularly in the election year, and it has happened in the past as well. But one thing which we are discussing about the Rajya Sabha is apparently the opposition has not been able to zero in on any particular issue on which they are united, and therefore there should be a debate on that. Although when they discuss the motion of thanks, all the regional parties can raise their own respective issues, and this is exactly what the chairman Mr. Venkaiah Naidu has been arguing for the last so many days, that whatever issues you have, whether TMC has got any issue with the CBI or TDP has got any issue with the special status, why don't you raise it when you are taking part in the motion of thanks debate? But unfortunately that is the perhaps strategy. Disruption may be having much more impact, that could be there. But I fully agree, in fact all of us agree, that in a parliamentary democracy which we have got, Parliament is a forum to discuss all the issues in the world, and in fact the legislative business at the end of the day gets through. But therefore the government will not have any regret. As I said earlier, In the Lok Sabha, the ruling party, the government has got plenty of time to put across their viewpoint, to present their performance and achievement. At the same time, Prime Minister has already addressed Lok Sabha. If there is any opportunity, if at all there is a discussion on the motion of thanks in the upper house, I am sure the Prime Minister will again take that opportunity and participate in the debate. But I think it is unusual for the Rajya Sabha just 2 days before it adjourns not to take up the discussion in the motion of thanks. But I do hope that this formality will be completed, but I am not very sure what will happen to the discussion on the budget, because at the end of the day, finance bill has to be passed before Parliament adjourns on 13th. So there could be, I think, lack of coordination on the part of the opposition also. Somehow they could have grilled the government much better on the floor of the House during discussion on the motion of thanks and also on the budget. Although in the budget debate today, Mr. Moily was making a very frontal attack on the government. So therefore, I don't know why the strategy is to let the Lok Sabha continue but not allow Rajya Sabha to function, whereas both the houses provide very good platform to all sections of the house to put across their viewpoint. But I fully agree with you that we as democracy, in fact our media also have a role to raise these issues like what we are debating today. But media has to play to the gallery. Whatever is happening in the house, they report. But I have yet to come across any editorial saying that what happens to the tradition, to the parliamentary values, if we are playing to the gallery for vote's sake, then what will happen to Indian parliamentary democracy? So it's a question which I think ultimately the lawmakers, the parliamentarians have to address. People can elect them, but let's not forget that people watch all these things. They do watch which way the Indian parliamentary democracy is going, and they sometimes do regret, and that may be reflected when they get a chance to vote.
Sure. Chakshu, what are the key pieces of legislation that are set to lapse, and with 2 days to go, what's going to be the government's priority really?
Frank, I think there's a motor vehicles bill which is currently pending in the Rajya Sabha that will lapse. There's a citizenship bill, fairly contentious, that will lapse. Triple Talaq, another fairly contentious bill that will lapse. But you know, if I thread together what Dr. Agnihotri and Mr. Tandon were saying, you know, there are three broad things that we really need to look at. The first is, you know, we are a parliamentary democracy. This parliament will be consigned into the history books in 2-3 days' time. And when we revisit those history books, the pages of parliament will be blank because the houses were completely disrupted. You know, the record will not show as to what this parliament deliberated. That's the first thing. I think the second thing that's equally important is that yes, you know, Mr. Tandon pointed out, the government will walk away from this parliament session and they would have had legislative business that they were able to complete. So the finance bill will be passed by Lok Sabha. The constitution says, you know, that if it doesn't pass through Rajya Sabha, it doesn't really have to, but you know, within 14 days, it will be automatically be assumed to be, you know, passed. Many bills have been passed, some, you know, with discussion, some without adequate discussion. But what it's doing is that it's reducing parliament to a formality, right? I mean, we need to rubber stamp things, and, you know, it is good that some of those things can be check marked and rubber stamped. But the important question to discuss is, should parliament only be an arena for discussing government legislation? Should it also not be an arena for discussing, you know, issues from states in the Rajya Sabha or other important issues? And which brings me to the third point, which is, we are having these disruptions, and what you see in parliamentary disruptions slowly starts getting reflected in state Vidhan Sabhas. After, you know, people look at the parliament and say, oh, you know what, if it is valid for parliament, why is it not valid for, you know, state legislatures working? In the UP legislature, during the governor's address, you know, planes were thrown and paper balls were thrown. During the Karnataka governor's address, you know, there was a fair bit of disruption in the house. Is our parliament setting the right kind of standards for the deliberative democracy that we have? And if it is not, what are those things that we need to do, either in terms of self-regulation? Because it's not as if, you know, the chairman in Rajya Sabha has on multiple occasions said, you want to debate an issue, let's come and debate the issue. So clearly it's not because of want of time for debating the issue. I think it is, there's some kind of a, parliament is being used as some kind of a political mechanization where people are saying, oh, you know what, I'm not going to debate, but, you know, here's what I can do which will not, you know, let the house function. I think that may not be the best thing that can happen in a democracy. The idea of a parliament is to deliberate and then disagree. And that is something that the chairman said on multiple occasions. But you can't have that you disagree, so you disrupt. So I think that's a distinction that we need to make. And when the next set of parliamentarians come in, possibly this will be used as precedence that, oh, you know what, this was a session that was completely disrupted. I completely agree with Mr. Tan. It's the last session of the parliament. There's going to be, parliament is a forum for politics. If you remember 2014 February, Lok Sabha was completely disrupted, and there were scenes, which we hope will not get repeated in a parliament. But with every passing year, we should learn from our, mistakes and see as to how the institution can be improved. And Mr. Agnihotri made a very valid point. It's only the parliamentarians who can ensure that what is the collective will to go forward to do these things.
Right. Yes, Mr. Ran, you want to add something here?
I was just trying to make a point. Earlier when I said that this time the opposition strategy is to allow Lok Sabha to function and disrupt Rajya Sabha, one possible reason could be that the triple talaq bill is now pending before the Rajya Sabha, and there may not be a consensus among the opposition parties whether to allow it or not, because some parties are on record having opposed it, but there are certain parties like Congress party which can't afford to oppose it. Therefore, the strategy may be not allow Rajya Sabha to function, because if it takes up triple talaq bill, then the divisions within the opposition will be visible. So therefore, let Rajya Sabha not function. So therefore, the disruption. This could be one reason, and there may be a couple of other piece of legislation also on which the opposition is not united. Because normally, if we have seen in the previous session, because the opposition has combined opposition has majority in the Rajya Sabha, so they allow Rajya Sabha to function and disrupt Lok Sabha. And this time round, it is Lok Sabha which is functioning, not the Rajya Sabha. Could be one reason is that the triple talaq bill, they don't want to come up before this house and let the parliament adjourn, and the government will be forced to re-promulgate the ordinance again. This could be one of the reasons. I would like to be enlightened by my friend if there are any such legislation which are pending in the Rajya Sabha on which opposition is not a united house.
Chakshu?
I think there are disagreements across the house on a number of key pieces of legislation. Motor vehicles is one, citizenship is another, triple talaq is another. But that's great political strategy that if the house does not function, these bills will lapse. But I think as a citizen of this country, I would rather see political parties say we disagree on these bills. Can we come across a consensus either within a select committee scenario or a parliamentary standing committee scenario and debate those bills there? But if that doesn't happen, this should not become a routine affair where people have disagreements. They start, stalling house proceedings. I think which all of us as panelists agree. But there are administrative bills which will also lapse. It's not only a question of the fact that these are only, I remember there were news reports which said that there are 6 bills on which consensus has been reached, and there were simple bills like the companies ordinance and a couple of other ones, where these are
that does not include
triple
the citizenship
absolutely,
as well as the triple talaq.
Yeah.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is, because of those contentious issues, there are other administrative bills which will also get, the same fate as those contentious bills. And ideally, that should not be the case. Ideally, people should be able to come together and, talk it through.
Right. So, Mr. Agnihotri, what's the best way forward?
Well, best way forward is to go to the people and wait for the election results. But let me come back to these bills pending there. I think there is one very important bill on consumer protection bill on which there is total consensus. And therefore, it is likely, you see, all these things get decided. Also, there is a business advisory committee in the house, and that is where, irrespective of whatever differences they have on the floor, sometimes an agreement is reached that let us get through some agenda which is not controversial and which is not contentious. So, if a triple talaq bill is not listed, it won't be discussed, or if it is listed number 7, then it won't be discussed.
Right.
So, the strategy would be to at least list those bills which can be passed at the top of the ladder and try to see whether something can be achieved.
Right.
May I ask,
yes, Mr. Swaraj,
is there any precedent when the upper house has not discussed the budget at all? Has there been any precedent in the past?
There may have been, I am not sure, but there may have been, and there have been instances where the budget has been passed without discussion.
Yes.
Disruption.
Right.
Mr. Tandon, within the span of the last 5 years, there have been at least one occasion when the Rajya Sabha was not able to discuss the finance bill and the budget was passed because the House actually adjourned before the discussion could start there, and the constitutional 14-day period kicked in. So,
Sure.
the
So there's a provision there as far as that is
Yeah.
concerned. So that is taken care of as as far as the government is concerned. But a quick closing comment from you, Mr. Tandon. On will this impact? Will what's happening in Parliament impact the elections coming up?
I don't think so. But political parties are always conscious of this fact that it does. And therefore they play to the gallery, the way we have seen in the Rajya Sabha, all regional parties raising their respective issues. So that means they know that people are watching, and therefore if they are raising those issues, it will have an impact. But looking at the larger picture, we have seen in the past so many years, whatever happens in Parliament has got very little impact on the people when they are going to vote in the next 100 days. So I don't think so. But the fact remains that the formality of having a budget session was there, having vote on account passed also was there. So and the discussion on the motion of thanks is also necessary. Debate on the budget is also necessary. So I think all the formalities will be completed, at least in the Lok Sabha, which is mandatory. But I doubt whether all these things, whatever happens in Parliament, people, as the Chairman Rajya Sabha has been repeatedly saying, telling the members, the whole world is watching you, let us have some order in the House and let's debate the issues. But politics is different. So therefore, at this juncture, I think the opposition knows that they have got very limited time till they go to the polls. So therefore, let us make use of the time available in Parliament to raise their respective issues. This is exactly what they are doing. So they know what they are doing. Therefore, I think they will be accountable to the people. So,
Right.
yeah.
Parliamentarians have been voted to power by we, the people. So it is up to the parliamentarians really to decide what they want to do in Parliament. Is the general consensus coming out of this debate from our panelists. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.